I'm going to call to order the Charter Township of Oxford Planning Commission regular meeting of Thursday, February 24th, 2022 at 7:07 p.m. And if we would all rise to pay our respects to the flag, I'd appreciate it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If the secretary would note the roll right now, we are absent 3. Yes. But we think 1 is on the way because I just talked to him on the phone. So we're absent, with excused absent to Mr. Hunwig and also to Mr. Bailey.
Yes.
And Mr. Knoll should be arriving shortly. So just note that for the roll, and hopefully John makes it.
Okay, it's
I'm
noted.
looking for an approval of this evening's agenda.
I will move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
So I have moved to approve the agenda by Mr. Spiz and seconded by Ms. Ross. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting's agenda has been approved. Is there anyone that has a conflict of interest in anything here tonight that we should hear about? I don't believe I have any. I don't think any other members have any, so we're good on that. We need an approval of the minutes of the Planning Commission regular meeting of February 10th, 2022.
I will move to approve the minutes from Planning Commission regular meeting February 10th, 2022.
Second.
Well,
I wasn't
think,
here. You go ahead.
you want me to use Mr. Turner?
Yeah.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Spiz for approval of the Planning Commission meeting minutes of February 10th, 2022, and supported by Mr. Turner. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone here from the public that wants to speak on items that are not on this evening's agenda? And seeing none from the public, we'll move on to unfinished business, which we have none. And new business is next, which would be the final site plan or preliminary site plan approval of the applicant for Enclaves at Woodbridge LLC, and I believe the representative is here. Right. So if we could hear from the petitioner.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Dominic Garrett is my name. The petitioner here on behalf of Enclaves of Woodbridge LLC. We are asking and seeking approval for the next phase, a continuation of phase 1 of the Enclaves of Woodbridge project currently under construction. We will be opening the models hopefully next month, and we already have 14 units under construction in phase 1, and we hope to continue on. So we're seeking approval for the next phase so we can have product ready for the upcoming year.
Okay, I understand that part. I think what I want to do, Zach, is if we jump to you first.
All right.
You're a little more lengthy, and then maybe in the meantime we'll have another planning commission member arrive. Well, I looked at your agenda and it was the lengthiest one I think we had on there. So.
Yep.
All right, let me pull you up here. So if you want to get up, Mr. Garrett, he's going to start with the podium and present his. Do you have letters from all the representatives, Mr. Garrett?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Good evening, everybody. So this is a combined preliminary and final site plan. So this would be the final stop here if approved tonight. Condominium buildings do not go to the Township Board. So again, this would be the last stop. The proposed project would have 11 buildings, all duplexes, so 22 total units. The space in between would be common units. The buildings would include driveways and limited common elements for the driveways and for back porch. And again, final site plan, you're checking for compliance with the whole zoning ordinance. The property is 10.3 acres. It has 574 feet along Market Street. It's zoned multiple family, and the duplex use is a permitted use within the zoning district. It's also consistent with the future land use map for those of you keeping track at home. And there are a number of other multiple family developments in the area, including at the very top of the hill and phase 1 of Enclaves to the other side. For area width, height, and setbacks, it's a little complex for these types of projects because they're developmental standards for the zoning district. I'm on page 4, onto page 5 now. And then there are also specific standards for multiple family structures in there. But the parcel is larger than the minimum lot area. It's larger than the minimum width. The proposed lot coverage is less than what's allowed. The setbacks are all appropriate. There is one note we have there that some of the setbacks that are noted on the site plan aren't fully consistent with the zoning ordinance, and so that should be corrected. The setbacks are okay. I do want to note that a couple of the locations where decks are proposed, they may be within the building-to-building setbacks or within the required setbacks. Patios are allowed, but not decks, because decks need to meet the same setbacks as the building they're attached to. For unit density, you guys have math for the number of bedrooms and the number of units that are allowed for multiple family. This is consistent with both of those. The building length is consistent with what you allow. It's not adjacent to a single-family residential use or zoning district, so there's no special setback there. The building spacings, as I mentioned, it's consistent. There are a couple spots where decks may encroach within that if they're decks instead of patios. The side entry garage driveway meets the width there. Has access from paved road. Will have internal streets, and it is proposing 5-foot driveways along the sides of the road. A couple things we note, and we discussed this at the first phase, is the plan shows the driveways running clear through, with the driveway stopping at the edge instead of the driveways running through and the driveway hitting up to it. And the driveway does not follow around the cul-de-sac at the end, and there's not a crosswalk, so it's just kind of a sidewalk to nowhere. So those should be remedied. For natural resources, not much on the site right now. No wetlands, no woodlands, no water bodies. It's lots of interesting topography there, although less so than before large equipment was out there. For circulation, the majority of the units will be accessed from an internal roadway. There will be 2 units in building 27 that will have direct access from market, and they don't meet the minimum spacing, but the planning commission can consider a waiver for that spacing if, let me get the terms here, based on the traffic volumes, intensity, use for driveways, site distances, distance from intersections, presence of physical barriers between driveways, and the importance of additional curb cuts to the function of the site. This is a similar issue that was brought up on phase 1, and waiver was granted for that. All the parking will be within the garages or in the driveways. There are no parking signs going up on the fire hydrant side. I will let Mr. Sharp do essential services and utilities, but the preview is it's going to be hooked up to water and sewer systems, and it will have a stormwater system. For landscaping and screening, the calculations appear consistent with the zoning ordinance for how many plants are being planted around there. The one thing that we note is that the clear vision zones, which are little triangles at intersections, they are drawn to the right dimensions, but the pen started in the wrong place. The pen started at the edge of the road, at the back of the curb, as opposed to the right-of-way. So they would have to get pushed a bit to the south, and because of that, they ought to be redrawn, and if there's any landscaping within that area, it will need to be adjusted. Also, there are no details for an irrigation system, and this would be primarily for the landscaping along Market and near the entrance sign. The site plan calls for 4 cast iron decorative light poles. It meets the height, it meets the light intensity. However, your zoning ordinance by default says it needs to be fully shielded and facing down. But you can do a waiver if it's not going to cause glare off-site and it's more consistent with the character of the area. For phase 1, a waiver was granted for similar poles. The one thing I will note for the color temperature, your zoning ordinance specifies metal halide, incandescent, fluorescent, or mercury vapor. These plans call for LED, and the spec sheets show a large range of color temperature. Once you get more than 3,000, it gets to be a very white light, almost like daylight. So we would recommend keeping the color temperature to 2,400 to 3,500 Kelvin. That's consistent with the color temperature of the lights that you list in your zoning ordinance, and it was a condition of the phase 1 approval. All right. Signage, there is a proposed entrance sign. Good with the height, good with the setbacks. The only issues we note is the sign area isn't noted on there. It appears it's consistent with what's allowed, and it may also be in a clear vision area, so that area should be drawn on and adjusted as necessary. Floor plans and elevations have been provided. They're consistent with the language for architecture for multiple family. We did not receive master deed or bylaws. Your zoning ordinance requires those draft documents as part of final site plan review. Historically, or at least the past couple of years, this body has seen a draft and given direction for staff and consultants to do final review. Your zoning ordinance requires some specific language to be in there for maintenance of certain structures and general common elements. I don't have the master deed, so I can't provide guidance if that's in there or not. Let's see. So a couple of options tonight. You could grant approval if you find all the criteria are met with the condition that the consultants review and approve the master deed and documents, or you could grant preliminary approval and come back later and do final approval with those documents provided. All right, on to the site plan review criteria. It's generally complete except for the master deed. There are a couple of minor things that aren't in there, such as showing all required information within 100 feet of the site, calculating the number of bedrooms. We're able to figure out that information, and it doesn't appear like it affects the ability to review. And I won't go through your options tonight because they're the same as they are for every site plan. You can approve with conditions, you can postpone, you could do preliminary or combined. A couple of determinations and findings before I step away is you need to determine whether or not you grant the waiver for reduced distances for the driveways for the units on Market Street. You could consider allowing the decorative or historic light fixtures and the waiver for the information that's not on the site plan. Basically, your ordinance says you need to show all these information 100 feet around the entire site. It's there for most of it, but there are a couple spots where it's not. There are a number of potential conditions that have been identified, and in the draft resolutions, I tried to compile them from the other consultant reviews. There were 2 draft resolutions you received, one that was for combined, preliminary and final, and one that was just for preliminary, depending on how you guys want to go. I do have a couple paragraphs that I can add for the decisions on the driveway spacing and the decorative lighting when it gets to that point.
Within the,
Yep.
okay, when a motion is made? Okay.
Yep.
So as part of a conditioned motion, you would add those ingredients?
I would add them as extra paragraphs.
Extra paragraphs, okay.
More reading for the commissioner.
I will read those ones.
Maybe we should, are there any, I mean, he's up there. Does anybody have any questions they want to ask him at this point in time to
Mr. Chair,
address his, yes, Mr. Knoll.
I apologize to the board and the audience for being a little tardy tonight.
I understand it can happen to anybody.
Thank you. Can you talk of the fixtures, the light fixtures? We approved them for phase 1, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
And can we just ask them to duplicate? Is this a duplicate of those?
Yep, they're the same fixtures. And your criteria for allowing the non-shielded is you need to be convinced that it's not going to generate glare off-site and that it's consistent with the character of the area.
Well, wasn't it true in the past they were trying to keep light from going upward for an intrusion into the atmosphere?
Yep.
And overall, I mean, that's kind of what the ordinance was originally established for. But we've already granted a very, is it identical to the one that is here?
Yep.
To the previous one to the
It's
north
the same
side right
spec
now.
sheets.
So in my opinion, I would like them to all be the same.
I agree.
I agree.
So, you know, I don't want to change from that, so I think that would have to be a condition in the motion right now that we would add.
Yep.
And the other one would be, like you said earlier, for the drives, right?
Yep. And it is the exact same specs for the fixtures,
Yeah.
whatever page.
Now, I didn't know about the lumens when you first talked about that. Now, that was a nice idea because then we don't get too bright of a white.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because I think it's hard for people to even drive sometimes when you're going up a place like that.
Yeah.
You know, so I guess if there's any other questions for Zach while he's up there, we could probably do that. If there's not, we should probably hear from Mr. Sharp.
Mr. Chair, I have another question.
Oh, yeah.
I've been struggling with the driveway situation. Can you go over that one more time for Ashley here? Because she nudged me twice. I'm not sure. She was
Okay.
up there that.
So you want me to blow one up a little bit larger? Is there one example to use in particular off the site plan?
It's for the building 27 up there.
Now, Mr. Chair, may I speak?
Sure, Mr. Knowles.
If I remember right, we did some changes with the phase one, with one of the homes coming off of Market Street, and the rest of them coming off of the cul-de-sac drive. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
The other side is nearly identical. Flip.
That's where I was trying to lead into.
Yep, let me find my access section.
But you're talking about building 27 where it comes off of Market Street.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So your zoning ordinance says you need to have 100 feet between those driveways. They're not 100 feet. But you have the opportunity to waive that.
Would 26 be the same though?
What's that?
Would 26 be the same as 27?
They're on an internal roadway.
Both of them. It's on a
Yep.
roadway, it doesn't.
Yep.
Got it, okay.
That's cul-de-sac road is what I call it.
Yep. And so the criteria are, in granting the waiver, in addition to Township's engineer, you look at traffic volumes, the intensity of use for driveways, site distances from intersection, presence of physical barriers between driveways, and the importance of additional curb cuts to the function of the site. So the language, it's really intended to limit the number of curb cuts on like Lapeer, but it kind of bleeds into this a little bit. You know, so the idea is on Lapeer you don't get every 90 feet a curb cut because it makes traffic dangerous and choppy.
But Zach, as a quick note, when you look right here, this building across the street, this is in and these driveways are in.
Yep.
Now they're on the same street and they're in the same, this is a distance greater here than it is from here to here. So we already have it on the street on the opposite side.
And there is a boulevard there. There's
Yes.
a median.
Yes.
So in my opinion, the traffic that's coming this way isn't going to be, it's for this driveway, and the traffic entering into it going in the eastbound direction is for these two driveways.
If you have
So the
turning,
safety mechanism is right here where you have to
Yep.
loop around or something to get back into this direction. So, I mean, we already have it in one position. I'm not negative for it to happen here. I mean, I'm okay with it at building 27 the way it is. We've already done it.
I like the boulevard dividing the two.
yeah, I was gonna say, if you have a turning collision there, something has gone horribly wrong.
Oh, yeah, well, that's when you come home what time of night?
Grandma.
And from where? Yeah.
And if there is interest here, I'll plant the seed. I'll do a quick version
Well,
of the additional
I mean,
paragraphs.
from my point of view, there is interest from me. I don't know if anybody's negative against
You can
it.
probably draft those and give them to Commissioner Milt.
Yeah,
He likes to read these.
Oh, these are pretty chicken scratching.
he'll chicken scratch them out.
But I'm happy to read it, and it
Yeah, that's-
addresses that waiver
The
and,
two issues we're dealing with then, it will be the lighting and the driveway,
Yeah, so we have the same
and
fixture.
whatever Mr. Sharp comes up with.
Well, we haven't talked to Mr.
Right.
Sharp yet. We're gonna speak to him in a
Mr.
minute.
Bitter,
all right.
I've got a question. Why doesn't the sidewalk go all the way around the cul-de-sac at the end?
My understanding is that there's a desire to do future phase in that area, and the cul-de-sac would go away at that time. However, your zoning ordinance says you need to have sidewalk along those internal things. And so if there is a future phase and the cul-de-sac goes away, that sidewalk would get torn up because the road would go straight.
But there's a maybe, not a future phase.
Right, if there's not a future phase.
Well,
then
that's a
you're gonna
good
have
question that you
sidewalk.
asked, and I appreciate it. I think Mr. Spiz has a comment.
I have a question, and I'm not sure it's for you, Zach, or for the petitioner themselves. Why wouldn't we put a preliminary or a final site plan for the whole piece of property? Because it seems like we're splitting it in half, right? And
Yep.
Wait,
my concern is that if somebody comes in and tries to split it later or build on it later, and it's completely different, it's a whole new can of worms, versus saying, okay, here's the development plan for the whole site. We may only build half of it as a phase one or phase two, which is fine. But then it eliminates the cul-de-sac issue, you have the road all the way to where it needs to go, and we're good to go.
It's-
But that's where I'm
yep.
confused.
So that's actually one of the things we identified in site plan amendments to more clearly delineate if you're doing multiple phases, we want one preliminary for the whole thing. Right now, some of the impediments to that are there's a limited amount of time that your preliminary site plan is good for. And once you've passed that, you can't do a final until you do another preliminary, which is why we're here with this today. So we are looking at ways to make that easier. Another one of the complications has to do with why this was cleaved off from the earlier phase is you need to have certain language in your master deed saying which improvements you will build and which improvements you may build. And if something's shown on the site plan, like a road and a sidewalk and stormwater and landscaping, the site plan says you must build that. But if you don't build the future phase, you're not going to add that section of road or that landscaping to support it. So it gets complicated with the master deeds of you have to say we're going to do this, but then you don't, or you don't. It's competing laws cause complications. But yes, we are.
Mr. Chair,
I'm confused.
if I could interject a thought, the phase 3 of this is a tremendous land balancing act, isn't
I
it?
know.
Okay,
Yeah. Well, and one other thing
I'm sorry.
that
Far end of it.
Yeah.
one of the value of doing a preliminary for the whole thing is that it's, we can very clearly say, this is the most number of units you get because this is the most number of units you can put on a single road that's not a boulevard. As opposed to, they're gonna put this on there and then someone in the future may come in and want to put more units and they're like, you're over your max. You can't put as many as you can actually fit there because too many units. Let me try to explain why it's not all in one preliminary. So one of the biggest obstacles is your zoning ordinance says after you get preliminary approval, you got 365 days to do something. A next phase may come 2 years or 3 years later. And your ordinance doesn't have flexibility to accommodate that.
I have a question with that.
Yep.
I know we have multiple developments, it's still, to this day, that were approved years ago that still aren't built out. So what's the difference between that? Why couldn't I put a preliminary or a final together, just, we haven't built?
it will
phase two?
eventually expire. It will eventually expire under the current ordinance that we have right now in place.
There are certain triggers, so if you get approval and you start turning dirt, then you've kind of locked it in. If you get approval and you don't do anything, then it expires.
I think the key thing that you just said is once activity has started. Because that's proof of the job under construction at that point in time. It could be get the soil erosion permit and start moving earth, and that would still say the activity has started. But what, just so some of the other members that don't know what we're doing on ORC, and we're a little off cuff here, but we might as well point it out. We're trying to amend the ordinance to give a better length of time for a site plan in the future where we won't have the expiration date within 1 year only.
Yeah, and I understand that part.
But I know what you
I'm
asked,
still confused. I don't understand the,
why they can't do it.
Yeah,
You'd have to get Mr. Garrick up here
I
and
guess
ask.
once you start building, okay, you're back, but I mean, we've had developments through this entire township that start building and then stop building because they can't sell them or something else happens. And it's been in, Waterstone had it for a while, Hills of Oxford had it for a while. There was vacant lots that were in there but were sold to different builders because the builder never finished them. So that's where I'm kind of confused.
Yeah, but that
Why
was
would you
vacant.
have-
Think
But
of
the plot was
the,
there, you did, your site plan was all done already.
yeah, think of the infrastructure. That the site plan gets the big picture stuff, not the individual houses.
Understand?
And so if you put the roads
You have to
in,
put the entire road in sidewalks in.
yeah,
Understand.
then you're good for whatever. But if you don't do those, then it would be.
So you're saying it basically predicates on the road going to where it's proposed versus all the way to the end of that piece of property
Yeah.
is the only thing. And the water and sewer main.
I wouldn't say that's the only thing.
The sewer lines and water lines would have to put in ground too.
Well, it's a connection of all the utilities, but
Right.
yeah.
And the site.
And in all fairness, I think if, Mr. Garrick, would you like to answer part of that, please, so that we get a little better, some clarity on it?
If you remember when we first came in with this project, we laid out the entire 10 acres. We laid out the north side as
Yeah, I thought
well.
we did.
We did.
We laid it out and we were going to get approval on all of it, and it's the exact same product all the way through. I think it came out to about 48 units on this side of the street and about 32 on the other side of the street. Then what we found out is there was an issue with sewer capacity and where the sewer was going and the storm. And also there was an issue that the board wanted clarification when that street went around that it was going to go out to all the way around. And we couldn't give that authority because that last 8-acre parcel was owned by Burton Castman, and they needed to come in for site plan for that. As well as Burton Castman, I believe, had to finalize the sewer, where the sewer was going, how much capacity. So the board deemed that we could put in this section right now that had enough capacity and sewer depth here, and then when the next phase comes back, we'll resolve the exit street and then continuation. So that's how we ended up with back here with the 22. That's just a temporary cul-de-sac until we can get the rest of the site plan approved. Which our goal is, we spoke today with Burton Castman, and the goal is to sell us the additional 8 acres, and then we'll put it all in, and hopefully by the end of the year, we'll come in for the rest of the site plan. We'll call that phase 2.
Before the end of this year?
Yes, before the end of this year.
I thought this parcel butted up right against the school property. Or is there an 8-acre parcel in between them?
Yeah, the undeveloped.
There's an 8-acre parcel in between Market Street and this parcel.
Where the
Is it-
phase
is it-
2 apartments want to go.
Yes,
Is it like right in,
Okay,
is it
different
right in
detail.
here?
right in there.
Yes.
That's approximately 8 acres.
But
And
wasn't that
and
supposed
that's
to
where
be
the
where the other
road would-
5 units of the 12 were supposed to go for the apartment buildings?
Yes. Oh, for the apartments, yeah.
Yeah, because then that would take away the apartment building development. If this 8 acres went into something, you're talking about purchasing that?
Correct.
Maybe he's going to build apartments.
No.
Hang on. Now I have a couple questions. that
I may not be able to answer them.
Well, we know Burton Castman, and we know what they've done in the past. So then would you propose a very similar unit type development of what you're doing right now?
We have a ranch style 7-plex that we've designed and built condo that we would like to try and,
So it's all on one level, but it's 7 units per building.
yeah.
And you would be able to put how many units like
2-car
that?
garages, about 7 units a building. He usually gets about 6-7 units to the acre.
Well, that's not excessive.
Mr.
That would
Chairman,
probably be about half the density that they were proposing.
Okay, from the multiple.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the apartments, there's 20 units in each building, they had 5 more going.
Correct.
All right.
so at
Mr.
that
Noel-
time, you would put the horseshoe all the way around to Market Street?
Well, that's what I've been after them, is to bring in their plan with their 8 acres with our plan so we can finalize our street, which is basically just a continuation like we brought it.
You would just loop it around?
Yeah, if you looked at what we brought in like 3 years ago.
I remember it.
It just, the
Yeah.
street goes around, and it was about 48 units on our 10 acres, and then the street died right into their 8
Yeah,
acre
that's the
park.
horseshoe that John's talking about.
Yes.
Okay. All right, I wouldn't have a problem with that either. I guess, Dominic, we'll have you sit down for a minute. We'll have Mr. Sharp get up.
One, just,
Or you have
if
another
I can answer maybe, the master deed is just a continuation of phase 1. It's just an amendment. So we're not doing a new master deed for phase 2.
And I think what happened is it arrived at the township hall today.
He sent it to your attorney 2 days ago, and I got an email verification of, it's just an amendment, and the exhibit will show those units on it.
We did not get anything from our point of view at the planning commission.
Right. But I just want clarification, it's not a whole new master deed.
Okay. It's an amendment to the master deed.
Correct.
Does that answer your other
That
question?
answers my other question, I believe.
Mr. Knoll?
So the extensive bylaws will be the same as from one to the other?
Exactly.
Would be the same.
So maintenance and all the rest is all part
Right,
of it?
it'll be the same association.
Okay, thank you. So it's all one HOA
It will be all one.
at one time?
And
The
in
whole
the future,
thing,
in
even
the
the
future,
extension of the next phase would all be
Yes.
part of the same HOA?
yes, that's the goal.
Oh, okay. Well, Mr. Sharp, I still want to hear from you.
So do I take a question from you based on his comments?
Oh, boy, now you're really in trouble.
You want to talk
No,
about
I have a question for you based on his comments.
a question for me based
Once
on
you
his
get finished.
comments? I don't know, I'm still stuck on the lumens. The lumens are, I'm a 27K guy on my lighting in my house. I like it nice and soft. Yeah, from an engineering perspective, Dominic and his team, I'm sure that they received our letter. A lot of just general things to kind of clean up on. More detailed engineering wise, the site grading, they showed us enough information for site plan phase that, and we have seen these plans somewhat before, that we knew that everything's going to be graded properly out there. Sanitary sewer, they're proposing to connect to the existing sanitary sewer that's on Market Street, so this development will flow out to M24. Same with the water line, there's an existing stub. Go ahead, Mike. You're asking.
My question's on the sewer.
Okay,
I brought
okay.
about capacity. Do we still have that concern with the upgrade we did with the M24 modification?
No, we won't have that. We won't have that issue anymore. The problem that they have is, like I heard a sidebar over here about the grading, is that the property, once you get past that phase line, kind of wants to drop off the other way. There is an easement across that 13-acre school site that they could put a sewer across there in the future, because the whole reason we did this shift was to try to eliminate pump stations and things like that.
Okay.
So, but yes, there's not going to be a capacity issue there.
That's what I thought.
Nope. Water distribution, there was a stub that was put in with the original Market Street and Abbey Ridge development, so they're connecting to the existing water line on the south side of Market Street. They're proposing to run it on the, I guess it'd be on the east side of the street. They're going to put a stub at the phase line, which I believe, I don't know if the attorney put a letter in your packet or not, but
We have a letter from
I think
the
she had a
attorney.
comment about the phase line.
We're going to
whether
pull
it
that
should-
letter up for the record.
whether it should even be there.
right.
But we have no objections to that. With regards to the stormwater, they are collecting it in catch basins along the roadway. They have some rear yard storm drainage. It all gets collected and works its way through some existing piping over onto the golf course property, and this whole area is all a part of that agreement to be able to detain on the golf course property, so there's no issues there whatsoever. With regards to our pavement, sidewalks, and curbing, I think you guys have already talked about the cul-de-sac enough. The cross-sections that they're showing for their pavement meet the township standards. We have no objections to that. One question we did have was that they're showing an asphalt section on the plans, which is what they did for phase 1, but then when they actually constructed phase 1, they put in all concrete. So, not that it's a big deal, because that new concrete section also met the township's requirements. I'm just curious if they actually plan on doing the asphalt as shown on the plans in front of you, or if they intend to come back with concrete like they did in phase 1. So we have that. Zach mentioned the sidewalks and how the sidewalks, should continue through the driveways themselves and not be broken up. They did seem to show a few utility structures that were located in the sidewalks, and if their engineer through the design phase can kind of move those manhole structures around or gate well structures so they're not in the sidewalk. We always prefer that, put them in the grass area if possible. No safety path is required on this particular project. There's already a sidewalk out on Market Street there. And then again, we had questions about condominium documents because that is part of your final site plan. It's a requirement of your final site plan. Those are not included within the...
And the review has to be done by the township attorney.
Correct. Yeah, she gets very involved in that as well. And then with regards to landscaping, I think there was a few conflicts that we noticed just where they were showing trees and they were right next to fire hydrants and manholes and things. So if they can just move those around a little bit. But overall, we're, I guess, because primarily of the condominium documents, we would recommend preliminary approval. So final site plan would be up to you guys whether or not you want to proceed. It is it's the same project that was out there before. So it's not anything that you haven't seen.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions? No? Thank you.
I think the next page is actually Pete. Oh, that was the attorney letter. Pete, you're here. You want to step up real quick? I think you're coming up here real quick. That was your letter that you had written. And
yes, they're continuing on with the same as on the north side with the no parking on the hydrant side of the streets. They've addressed that already. Temporary cul-de-sac does meet the turning requirements for us down there, so we're good with that. Street name is fine. And again, I'm putting it into the phase 3. It can't be built until the street is finished all the way up there, getting past the number of units that you can have on the street. So once that happens, that takes care of all those issues at this
the continuation of the street would then take care of the number of units.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so otherwise I'm good with everything else.
So you're good on yours. I think if we just go back to the attorney's letter real quick, and I read it. If anybody didn't read it, they can take a few minutes to just take a spot check at it. I think the only thing that really stands out to me, and I mean there's a few things and everybody talked about future development, but the last paragraph when it starts about right here, we would recommend that final site plan review be held in abeyance, basically because I think there was still some issues outstanding that the attorneys wanted to resolve, and like he said, the master deed has been submitted, I guess, to the attorneys, which we don't really have recognition of that yet on our behalf here. But I certainly wouldn't have a problem moving this site plan forward as a preliminary site plan, but I wouldn't do it with a preliminary site plan plus final approval until we wrap up some of these other issues. So if anybody has any comments from the Planning Commission members, I would like to hear them maybe at this point in time. Miss Ross?
I do have one question. I don't know if it was already addressed. We talked about the deck and the setback, so I don't know if we ever came up with a solution or what.
Well, Zach, you might want to step back up here for that. She's asking about the deck locations in regard, or just decks only because patios don't count.
Right.
Yep. So the couple of solutions are for those spots where it would be within, either the decks would have to be shorter or reconfigured. So that's a case where there's several units where they're kind of like this, and the back wall is the minimum distance. So he's going to pull them up here.
I was going to write, like, there's an example of a deck.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like the one between 26 and 27, 40 feet is the minimum distance, so you can't put a deck in there. So that's something that we would review as part of a zoning permit. You come in for a deck and we say, you can't do a deck, but you can do a patio, because patios get special treatment compared to decks. They can extend into required setbacks a bit.
Can you guys see it good enough? Okay.
Thank you. I just didn't know if there was something else that we needed to address while we're in this process, so thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Knoll?
Why does the patio have different criteria than the deck? Is it because the decks are raised?
I will give you the short answer and the more nuanced answer. The short answer is because your zoning ordinance says so. The more nuanced answer is the developmental standards, setbacks and things are meant to manage bulk and keep overcrowding. And so when you look at a deck, especially one that's more than 30 inches above ground, because that's when you have to start put railings and things, it definitely has a different feel than an at-grade patio. So that's why a lot of communities like yours will allow at-grade.
You just added a new word, at grade. That's
Yep.
what I was getting at. So on, what is the number on that? 26.
Right here?
26 puts a
Right here?
patio on. It has to be at grade patio?
Yep.
How
Now,
do
it
we
can come-
guarantee that?
Well, yeah, so there is, it's been a little while since I've been in that section of the zoning ordinance, but there is some guidance, so it allows you to match the topography, so it doesn't have to be completely flat, but if you have to, you know,
Well,
contour
I've
it
seen
up.
some structures, I'm gonna call them structures, come off the back of a home that is all concrete like it would be a patio. They have retaining walls up and there's 2 or 3 steps going down to the grade of the grass that is mowed. What, if we're supposed to have a patio that's at grade, how do we guarantee that number 26 does that?
Well, through our inspection and permitting process. And so, you know, kind of, my rule of thumb is if you put the number of steps in there that you have to put a railing for, which is 3, then that's no longer at grade.
So the
Apparently
ordinance
that's,
calls that grade on a patio in this case?
what's that?
Would the ordinance call at grade?
I will double check that language. here.
I'll be careful because what I want to say is, to me, a patio can also be a landscape feature,
Yes.
and we don't regulate those landscape features so much as we would in a single-family residential neighborhood. But in a development like this, as a site plan, I think we have the ability to do that. So if you wanted to be specific in language, when we do a final site plan, you might want to have that clarified as to what,
The only reason I'm asking this and bringing it up, if it needs to go somewhere, fine. If it doesn't, it doesn't have to. If there's a reason why we're putting a patio in, it's supposed to be at grade, then shouldn't we ensure that it is at grade? Mistakes happen.
well, I want to, everybody might have a difference of opinion at what at grade means, and so when Mr.
Okay.
So-and-so, A, B, or C, comes in and wants to put a deck on, if he wants to raise it up a little bit because of what his grade is and what it's been graded up. Now, I haven't seen all the final grades for these plans, and neither has Mr. Sharp, so we don't really know what all those elevations are around all the buildings yet.
Right.
But we know when we come off those driveways, pretty much what we're gonna have when we have to go into those garages from what we have from the roadway.
Right.
But I don't know about the rear of the properties.
Couple sketches.
So, Zach, I think we would have to have a little better clarification. I mean, I like what you said because I'm the same way. I mean, in the code, it's 30 inches. Once you go past 30 inches, you're not at grade anymore. But John might be looking at that grade as maybe one step up, which is only 8 inches.
Yeah, and
I'm looking at it from the standpoint, there's a reason why we're going to put a patio in there and not a deck. That's to keep things lower to the ground, get people in and out of there if we had to. And I just trying to ensure that.
so here's the exact language. This is hidden back in footnotes to the schedule of district regulations, E1. Terraces, patios.
Bigger space.
Terraces, patios, and similar accessory structures that are not attached to a principal or accessory building and are unroofed and without walls or other continuous enclosure may encroach upon required side or rear yards, which shall be no closer than 5 feet from the side or rear lot line. Such structures may have open railings or fences not exceeding 4 feet in height and may have non-continuous windbreaks or visual screens not exceeding 6 feet in height. Such structures are not permitted to encroach in the required front yard. So it does have some specific numbers in there that we can work with.
I think we'll work with that with final site plans.
Yep.
This particular unit is going to be challenging
Yes.
for a deck because that's actually, building 26, Tom, if you go to sheet 2, I don't know if you can bring up page 2 there.
Page 2 off of this page?
Page 2 of the plan set, so it'd probably be the
Hang
next,
on,
probably be the next
I
sheet.
just gotta go down, I think. Am I getting close?
Think so?
There's 25, and
You still-
where's,
Nope, you're good. You're good.
I'm
So go
good
up,
somewhere right in here,
Go
right?
to the right.
Slide over.
I'm trying to slide over.
So there is a
There's
grading,
26.
there is a grading plan in here, Tom.
Yeah, there's a retaining wall right there.
Correct. You can see in the building that there's, the finished floor is 1103.
Right, right here.
Yes, and you can see the WO above it. That means that that's going to be a walkout. And
So
then
it's
you-
gonna be a deck.
So they could have a patio down below of the walkout, but you would, I guess, according to Zach, that they would need to somehow identify, or let the homeowner know, whether it be in the condominium documents or something, that a deck may not be allowed on there, or it'd have to be a certain size, or they'd have to ask for a variance, I guess.
And I think what John's point of view is, he's trying to make sure, how do we maintain that this doesn't occur?
Right.
Like if a person comes in, buys a unit and says, hey, I want to put a deck on the back of my unit, they go get another contractor to come in and put the deck on the back of it. John's saying,
You reject.
how do we manage?
You put it in the condominium if you're that worried about it, you put it in the condominium documents, just like we put
And
restrictions.
that's what I think we should do, and
At
that's what
Manitou
our final
Hills.
site plan, we should note that that is in those documents.
About
And we
decks
can
and things
take
like
care
that
of
at
it.
Manitou Hills, if you're that worried about it.
I think we had in phase one building, exact same issue. I
That's
think
it.
we did put it in, was it work with Zach?
Okay.
On the issue.
So we should be able to take care of it. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
and I think it only happened just a similar situation with one unit. But I do find it amazing that you can put a patio underneath it, but you can't put a deck above it.
Well, that's an ordinance. That's in an ordinance. But that happens more than you can talk about sometimes. Okay, I guess if, Mr. Turner, do you have any other questions at this point in time?
No, not at this point.
Ms. Ross, do you have any questions in regards to this
No further.
preliminary site plan? Mr. Knoll?
I don't, but I need to talk a little bit with Zach about how we're gonna handle section 40 with this, if I make a motion.
If you make a motion. Mr. Spiz, do you have any
I just
other?
had one question for petitioner, and Mr. Engineer brought it up. Relative to the road itself,
Okay.
being concrete, current phase being built is concrete.
We did, and we're moving towards concrete in all of our
Okay, I'm
development.
just wondering, because
It was
I
probably
would prefer them
designed,
to be the same,
yeah.
so your intent is to make it concrete for this phase also?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Well, and there's an advantage to release of escrow funds doing concrete, because you're not able to put the final course on to a certain point, and so that money's being held until that's done.
I got you.
We found several instances where I think they wanted to submit phase 2, and I think their design engineer just kind of picked the old ones up off the shelf and just put them together, because there's still some things that refer to, I don't know if it's phases or what it is, but, so I would assume that their engineer will be able to make that change very easily and change the section to show it as concrete, if that's what they're intending to do.
Another backup question, sorry. With the cul-de-sac, I know I'm taking control. With the cul-de-sac, would you make that in concrete too? Because ultimately you're taking it out.
Well, the cul-de-sac, what we typically do with the cul-de-sac is we'll run the main section through as concrete, and then you may put a piece of asphalt on each side so we can work it
Just
out.
2 eyebrows?
Yeah, and then when we come back in, we'll just put the curb
Yeah.
on each side.
Okay. So we'll just,
Okay.
that question's answered now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Eyebrows.
Mr. Chairman, with respect to the attorney's notes here and the cul-de-sac and the view that shows it, apparently it extends beyond phase 2 limits. Can we look at that?
You're saying the cul-de-sac, which is like, where is it?
Left.
I'm trying to get to it.
Yeah, I think, like Jim said, these were plans that were put right back in
I'm
motion because I screamed at them that we got to.
Runs out of this view, I gotta go to the next
But
view.
I think the plan maybe is to move that phase line to the
Hang on.
end of the cul-de-sac, and it may make a lot of
I'm there
heartburn go
already.
away.
It's in this view somewhere.
Do you agree?
The attorney doesn't want any phase line in there for whatever purpose.
Oh, she wants no phase line?
I think that's what her letter said.
Oh,
Stephanie wants temporary out.
It really is not a phase, you can call it a phase, but once we do an amendment, it just becomes a part of phase one, basically.
I
So
understand 100% what you're doing.
that's just wording, I guess.
You have to take Miss Morrison to dinner and discuss that, I guess.
Make sure we don't call.
Chairman,
Let's stop at that, let's stop at that part.
I think we have that covered, but,
All right.
because we're gonna reference the Rentrop Morrison letter.
You're gonna reference the letter?
It will be referenced in section 7.0 on a preliminary site plan amendment, or proposal that I'll make in a minute. But I'd like to have a discussion about format for this. Would it be acceptable if I got down to the planning commission received reports from Zach, Michelle's planning consultant dated February 17th, and have Zach speak for the lighting in the drives? Or is that, should he bring up the paperwork for me to say that?
I think he should bring the chicken scratch that he has up to you for that.
Okay. Would you approach the table, please?
Yeah.
Please approach the bench.
The bench.
I'll try to de-chickenify it. While you guys are deciding if you're doing preliminary final, that'll buy me some time.
So I think we've decided that. It's a conclusion right now that we're gonna go for a preliminary site plan.
Petitioner, if you run to do just one or the other, or do you want to table the whole thing?
No, I don't wanna table the whole thing. I wanna move this forward with a preliminary site plan approval. And then he can take care of what he needs to address. We come back another time and go into the final site plan.
I'd actually recommend.
But he's gonna do it this year. He's not fooling around. He's gonna move forward. Mr. Garrick, you better talk to the, wait, hang on, we got something going on down there.
Okay.
They're doing their thing. So
It's all broken.
would you address your comments to Mr. Cortez, please? 'Cause he's-
I'm not sure you heard my question. I was just asking if you wanted to consider, because we're only going to go for preliminary site plan tonight, right? We're not going to do the final. Is it, because I'm open either way, but I know Commissioner Berger feels we should go for preliminary. From your perspective, do you want to set it aside and do both preliminary and final at one time, or do you want to get preliminary tonight and then come back a second time and do final? I mean,
Well,
I'm open to
I
either.
would prefer full approval
I'm
with
sure,
conditions, because I haven't heard any conditions that were anything insurmountable on our part, because it's just everything that was approved in phase one. And that's, I think what we did in phase one was the same thing. We got full approval with conditions until Mr. Zach and
But I think
Mr.
our
Sharp
issue
were
is the
satisfied
right
with,
now is-
and your township attorney was satisfied with the.
Right, and I think ultimately we'll get there.
Yeah.
Just we don't have the document in front of us to even vote on, so we can't even go
Okay.
down that road. That's the issue with final. So it's really, I mean, it's really, in my opinion, up to you, but it's up to the.
It's just timing on our part, because we're already,
It's up to the vote.
I mean, it still seems like winter, but this is about the exact same time we had last year's approvals, and by April or May, I want to say, we were moving dirt already, and by September, we were paving, and here we are in December waiting for power, so I'm trying to get ahead of the game.
I mean, theoretically, we would have an answer from our attorney by the next meeting.
I would also, yeah, I'm
I mean,
just
so it
asking
would be,
just what he prefers. I mean, I can carry either way. Because the clock starts once the
Well,
preliminary gets approved.
We don't know when the next meeting is. We don't have a meeting date yet,
Yeah, it goes 365.
but
From preliminary?
That's what final.
From final, I thought.
I guess, I hate to be a rump here, but, you know, what it looks like when I read the attorney's letter and it says, Planning Commission, we would recommend that final site plan review be held in advance. Only until, I like to hear from the attorney, even if it's minor sometimes, to make sure we're in line with what we want to do for a final site plan. So my point of view is, I would have recommended a draft for resolution for a preliminary site plan and a motion accordingly, and have him take care of the needs that he has to, without all these conditions, because we're gonna have quite a condition, we're gonna have quite a list of conditions otherwise, from the engineer, from the lighting and the chicken scratch and what you want to call it.
I support that.
So
I
I think,
support that too, just asking if you.
so I would prefer to see this go through as a final preliminary site plan approval with a motion, unless someone says different. I don't make the motion, I'll wait to hear the motion, and we'll wait from there to see how it goes.
I was just asking the petitioner what he might have
Oh,
preferred.
I know what he wants.
I know what he wants, I know he wants final approval.
I'm trying to get you your tax base as fast as possible.
Oh, yes, sir.
And I appreciate that, but I mean, I think we're all in agreement, the final.
It's just like every other developer, just take your time, Mike, take your
No,
time.
I'm not looking to take my time. It's just, I know the final's not.
We have a
gonna
list of
take-
30 people for phase one. I have at least-
Dominic, the plus sign, I think, from everybody that's up here this evening, or minus a couple, is that we are happy to have you move forward with this development. So I
Appreciate it.
think that we're in favor of the development. I think when we first heard you come in with it previously, from when you first came in with the first phase, and the second phase and the third phase actually was all drawn at one time.
Right.
It decreased the density of this property
Right.
compared to what it could have had on it. I thought it was a plus, plus, and a plus. It was a win-win for all of us. So I'm for the development. I like the duplex units. I think they sell well in Oxford right now.
We need more.
We need more, so I'm happy to have you
Well,
move
the
forward.
site is amazing, and just the reviews, we have a list of 30, 40 people that are waiting on.
So I'm thinking that if we can get this through with preliminary site plan approval, and then have the things taken care of that need to be taken care of, we come back and we polish it off and we get you your final site plan approval, and then you move forward at your rate.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
And, Mr. Chair, if I might add, if things are in motion with our attorneys on the master plan and the master deed, then it should get back to our office relatively quickly.
Yeah.
And we can get you back on the schedule. That's not we're very flexible with that. We want you to succeed up there, so we want to.
Now,
Appreciate it.
we know we're going to have a meeting date very soon, because I just read Mr. Sharp's letter in regards to the electric company north of town, trying to move forward with their site plan. So we have another site plan coming back at us quickly, probably should be the first part of March, that we'll have the next PC meeting for that site plan.
March 10th and then March 20th.
And so if we can have all the documents on behalf of what we have on yours, you should be in here. Well, we have to advertise within so many days, but
Probably another month.
you should be in here really quickly.
Okay.
Okay, so we should have you into a final site plan very quickly. I don't think we're going to delay you either. We have some other things moving forward in the township right now that we know are going to come in for the planning commission.
Yeah, we just typically have another, 60 days out for permits.
You can have Jeff submit the engineering documents to us now,
Okay.
and we will start reviewing them. We
Okay.
just can't issue any approval letters, assuming everything's in order, until final site plan has been granted.
Yeah, I think if we run it concurrently, that's what I'm worried about, is if I have to wait another 30 days, and then I gotta go through engineering and
No,
out for permits. And
I don't believe you'll have to wait 30 days. If you come back to us with everything in a timely manner, we should have you on a meeting date very soon.
Okay.
Yep.
As soon
Yeah,
as
if
March
we-
10th.
If we can run the engineering
Yeah.
right away.
Yeah,
then
That's the
we're good.
earliest.
Yeah, you can do that right now.
We're positive we have a meeting coming up. So
I just can't issue any approval letters until site plan's been approved.
No, you just like wait another 30 days, and then get into engineering, then
I understand.
it's such a short season.
Even without
Tom, we can still do the 10th.
yeah, I get it.
March 10th,
I know.
JT Electric.
I just want him to feel
The
confident.
March 10th
Yeah.
meeting there.
You better start showing him.
Maybe 2 weeks later, 24th.
Are we?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion tonight if we could, please.
Mr. Nold, I would appreciate a motion.
This is, for the board members, this is a preliminary. So Oxford Township Planning Commission draft resolution for preliminary site plan of Enclaves of Woodbridge Phase 2. A resolution for preliminary site plan for the residential building condominium submitted by Dominic Garrick on behalf of Enclaves of Woodbridge for the property located south of Market Street, east of Lapeer, section 22 of Oxford Township, parcel number 0422200025. Whereas Dominic Garrick is the applicant on behalf of Enclaves of Woodbridge pursuant to the provisions of the Oxford Township zoning ordinance, submitted an application for the combined preliminary and final site plan of Enclaves of Woodbridge Phase 2 on February 3rd, 2022. And whereas the applicant submitted an 11-page site plan on February 3rd, 2022, with the last revision dated February of 2022, prepared and stamped by Gordon Wilson, a licensed professional engineer. And whereas the applicant has not submitted condominium documents which are required as part of the final site plan application as outlined in section 12.3C2K of the zoning ordinance, and whereas the planning commission has received a report from Michelle, planning consultant dated February 17, 2022, and his comments of tonight, February, what's the date?
24th.
24th, 2022, whereas the planning commission grants a waiver for driveways spacing on Market Street for driveways supporting building number 27 based on the limited traffic volumes, limited intensity of the residential use, adequate site distance from major intersections and boulevards, nature of Market Street as allowed in section 8.3 D2A of the zoning ordinance. Was that a D2A?
Yep.
Where the second part of this, whereas the planning commission approves the decorative historic light fixtures as an alternate based on the low likelihood they would be created offset glare, that they will be more consistent with the character of the site, including those approved for the Enclaves Phase 1 as allowed in section 10.2 E1 D of the zoning ordinance. Whereas the planning commission has received a report from Jim Sharp, engineering consultant, dated February 14, 2022. Whereas the planning commission has received a report from Pete Schultz, Oxford Fire Department Chief, dated February 11, 2022. Whereas the planning commission has received a report from Susan Morrison, Township Attorney, dated February 15, 2022. And whereas the site is located within the RM multifamily residential district, and whereas attached single-family residential duplex is permitted use in the RM multifamily residential district, and whereas the planning commission at its February 24th, 2022 meeting reviewed the applicant for the combined preliminary final I'll start over. Whereas the planning commission at the February 24th, 2022 meeting reviewed the applicant for preliminary site plan and site plan for Enclaves of Woodbridge Phase 2 and received no public input. And whereas the planning commission grants a waiver for information missing from the preliminary site plan as allowed in section 12.3 B2, information required of the zoning ordinance, and whereas the preliminary site plan on Enclaves of Woodbridge Phase 2 would meet the standards of 12.05A through 12.05O of the zoning ordinance site plan approval standards. And whereas the planning commission has authority to approve or deny preliminary site plan as provided in 12.3 B3 planning commission action, and whereas the approval of the preliminary site plan allows an applicant to submit a final site plan. Now therefore be it resolved, the planning commission by the majority vote at a duly noted regular meeting held the 24th day of February 2022 approves a preliminary site plan Enclaves of Woodbridge Phase 2 for property located south of Market Street, east of Lapeer Road, section 22 of Oxford Township, parcel number 0425200025 to the applicant subject to the conditions listed below. A, comments identified in consultant agency's review shall be addressed in the final site plan. And B, the preliminary site plan approval shall expire. The preliminary site plan approval shall expire and be of no effect after 365 days following the approval.
Well, the motion was received by Mr. Knoll. Do we have support for the motion?
I'll second it.
We have support for the motion by Ms. Ross. I would like a roll call vote for this, please, if you would, Kelly.
Yes. Turner?
Yes.
Nold?
Yes.
Spiz?
Yes.
Berger,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Motion was approved. Dominic, you got a little work cut out for you, but not too much. We hope that you're back very soon in front of us.
I hope so too. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Next on the agenda, we have communications and/or committee reports. I don't know that we have had too many committee reports other than, I can talk a little bit about ORC, but what about the rest of the people that are on committee?
For economic development, we haven't met yet, so it's going
Okay.
to get moving.
I guess, Zach, you want to speak about ORC? You've been running the ship pretty good lately. We've been headed with
So
quite a few new items.
we have a big plate for ORC. The first thing I'll say is something that we've been working on for a while is zoning map maintenance. So it sounds really boring, but basically looking at your zoning map and seeing properties that should be rezoned for consistency with zoning ordinance or areas that you know are going to redevelop to make that path easier as long as it's consistent with the master plan. There are a bunch of properties that we've identified. We're in the final stretch. It's more complex than a regular map maintenance project because we actually created a new zoning district that the master plan calls for. So that's going to be coming before this body here pretty soon. The ORC should be finishing that up at our next meeting. The other things that we're starting to dive into is planned unit development standards and site plan standards. Your master plan says we would like to have more developments be done as a planned unit development because you can get better quality out of that. That works for the people who live there and for the community. But right now, when you look through your standards, it's really difficult for folks to want to do that because the hurdles are really high and the benefits aren't as good and the process is really complex. So I've been working on that. The other thing is the site plan article, and these were things we discussed at the last meeting. There are a lot of kind of weird quirks in there and processes that aren't very clear, so we're trying to get it a more clean process, including things like if you have a variance, you get preliminary site plan, then your variance, and then your final site plan, so nobody feels like they're stepping on each other's toes. Also clarifying that if you're doing a large project, we want a preliminary for the whole thing and then a final for each phase, so you can see the general fit. Make sure that there's capacity for sewer and things like that. Provide a bit more flexibility for how long approval is valid. Mr. Sharp can probably speak, but once you get that final approval, sometimes it can take 18 months to get all the other approvals sorted out, and right now the 12 months is really tight. So we're looking at adding that in there. One of the other things that I'm going to bring up is a tool that I really like is having, before it comes to the Planning Commission and before the consultants really dig into it, an administrative review of completeness. And that's basically township staff will look at it and say, do you have everything here? And in that case, if you don't have a landscaping plan or a master deed or something else that's supposed to be there, you tap on the brakes. Because it's my experience in all the places I've seen, if there's that missing piece, there's a rush to get it to the Planning Commission fast. If you have something that's missing, that'll add usually 2 months or 2 meetings. Because at the next meeting where it's there, you're trying to figure out what's there, is it not there, and you're suspicious that something else has been missed, and then it's not until the 3rd meeting where you finally get approval. So kind of tapping that brakes up front, it feels like it's adding time, but my experience has been it actually makes it go more quickly because you have that quality control. So that's going to be a lot of work. It's going to make processes a lot easier for the township and for the developers, and so very exciting. Very nerdy, but very exciting.
It's not nerdy.
Process stuff is nerdy.
Well, it should be great for us though with a PUD concept. I mean, it should be what we want for the citizens.
Yep.
For the betterment of the community. So it's really a good concept going forward. Thank you, Zach. I don't know that kind of covers it from ORC. I don't know if we have any other committee meeting reports right now from anybody. Let's move on then. So we have planners. Do you want to make any other comments?
I got nothing else.
You're probably burned out.
I'm all spent, yeah.
Mr. Sharp, do you have
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
You're very good. Okay, pal. We're not going to pick on you anymore, I guess. Now we have commissioners' comments. Is there anybody that'd like to make comments? Mr. Turner, we'll start with you.
I have a question.
You have a question, not a comment.
Right.
Okay.
Last meeting here and in our ORC meeting, we put together a list of projects
Right.
that was going to go to the board for approval.
I don't think they've met yet.
Okay. So we're still waiting.
They have to meet.
Ninth.
Yeah, they meet coming up in the first part of March. Is it the 9th? Is that the next
Yes, it
meeting?
is.
Okay. They have to
6:30
meet
if you'd
first.
like to join us.
Mr. Spiz, do you have any comments this evening?
Not at this time.
Ms. Ross, do you have any comments?
No, not tonight.
Mr. Knoll?
Yes. Zach, thank you for your penmanship on the fly. Tonight was a little difficult. We had a lot of reading to do. And I apologize for being late tonight.
That apology is accepted, thanks. We're glad you're here. I think one of the things that I'll make a quick comment on is, and Zach started to pick up on it, but we are going to create another committee in a sense. I just saw Cheryl walk out, but it would be in regards to having what Zach talked about, where we could look at something to get an administrative completeness and put that together with people before it actually rolls into the planning commission. So we would do it administratively with a committee ahead of time, so that when it gets to us, a lot of these things would be addressed and covered to help expedite it quicker through the process.
Would help tonight.
So Mr. London may be involved in that, Cheryl may be involved in it, Mr. Knoll might be involved in that, and Zach is definitely going to be involved in that.
And similar thing to that is the township has, this is kind of invisible for most folks at the table up front here, but we've gotten really engaged with folks with pre-application meetings. It's always been an option in the ordinance, but folks haven't really used it in the past, and we've really been pressing folks like, come in and talk to us before you start spending a bunch of money on your plans. My experience has been it really improves the quality of the product that comes out and that gets to this body. So that's really exciting.
Okay. We have, and I did talk to Jack about it approximately a week ago maybe, or I don't know the exact date. I took some notes on it, so we're going to put something together for that committee, so we can do more of that. I have no other comments at this time. Mr. London, I see you're here tonight from the building official. Do you want to make any comments this evening?
I have nothing at this time.
You have none? The zoning administrator's probably made all of his comments he wants to make. Do we have any comments from the recording secretary this evening?
Nope, I'm good.
Oh, we're glad you're here, and I think you have a company with you.
Nice
again
to be
tonight.
here.
Okay, the administrative assistant to Mr. Curtis, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, Danielle.
Yep.
I don't know your last name.
Smith.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
All right, seeing that, we're at 13 for adjournment. We're going to adjourn this meeting at, I guess, 8:19.